Oh my god, we've got a lovely amount of people in chat already. Hello, everybody. How are we all doing? Hope everyone has had a good week so far. God, it feels like time is flying past because of the team challenges this weekend. Hold on, let me switch on my camera and stuff. Yeah, who was here for the team challenges this weekend? Be curious to hear what you thought about it. Joined the community a few days ago. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy to have you with us. Was a blast. Let's go. All right, let me... Shit, that's not what I wanted to do. You didn't see anything, okay? Dang it. Oh, me and my professional setup, huh? But yeah, hopefully everyone had a good time. Let's have a look. See so many cool projects in a short time. Yeah, honestly, that's always the thing that surprises me. I keep saying it every time. It feels like, honestly, it's getting pretty repetitive, right? But I'm really surprised every time by just the pure display of talent and artistry on display. It's freaking awesome. Rustam is saying the results are sick, guys. Yeah. Can't wait for breakdowns. Yeah. And I feel like, honestly, we did a little bit off the cuff, but the social media stuff that's going around already is pretty good. I love to see that as well. Not only because people are posting about their stuff, but also other people from the team challenge are commenting on other people from the team challenge, and that's the stuff that I love to see, you know? Just that community feeling is also like permutating outside of the community itself, which is really, really cool. So that is awesome. Hello, Will. Good to see you. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well, buddy. Galazar saying was a blast. It's always much fun to watch the result and the feedback, and to see so many cool projects. And Swan is saying sleeping peacefully after the art blast. Yes, yeah, because I know that a lot of teams are still like wrapping up and they're still implementing feedback and all that kind of stuff, right? So yeah, best of luck to anyone still doing that. Will there be new shot coasters or business cards made with the new challenge art? That's a good question. For people that don't know what Lily's referring to, I usually print business cards, and well, not usually. This was my first time doing it for Gamescom, and it features some of the cool art that people have made. Now saying that out loud, I realize that I should be more talkative about this, you know? Where's my little box? I think all my Gamescom stuff is in this one. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh my god, there's so much stuff in this. What even is all this? Oh. Look at this. You can barely see it. Beyond Extent logos. But no, Lily is referring to these guys. So these ones I got printed for Gamescom last year. So yeah. So that was one, and I think I got like 6 variants printed. So we got this one as well. There's this one too. That's from an older challenge. Let me see, we got 3 more, I think, right? It's the same one. This one from the Stylized team. It was like, is that like Market of Wonders? Oh my god, I can't remember. I've done so many of them. And then this one as well. This is the last one that I'll show off. Yeah, I still have a lot of them left. So I don't know if we're going to print new ones. If you just want to have a look at like the amount left. I think I got like 200 of each printed. So, hey, just a reminder, if anyone walks into me at like Gamescom and wants like a pack of like these business cards, let me know. You can hand them to your friends and your mom and your dog and all that kind of stuff, so. But yeah, we will have them on our game artist meetup. So, because that's for people that don't know, that's an event that we organize at Gamescom as well. I co-host that with a couple of my friends and my partner as well. So we are in the works of getting that up and running again. Talking to sponsors and all that kind of stuff. So we will be there in all that stuff you can take. I'll take half your stock. You gotta scatter them more at events. Well, here's the thing though, right? Like at Gamescom, I don't really go to events myself because usually I go to events where I like talk to friends, you know? So it's more like a meetup kind of thing for me rather than me going out to like events and network and all that kind of stuff. I basically network through proxy, you know? When like people bring their friends, I get to talk to them. Do you have an estimate of when the tickets for the meetup will be live? Nope, no clue yet. We are still working out the details. But yeah, I think this year probably not printing any new ones. But we will see. Because I do plan, and I'll show you why. I do plan on printing some new merch that I can test for myself. And I'll show you why. People that have been perceptive have probably seen this already, but it's because of this stuff, you know? This shit is practically like falling off my body. So ridiculous. But I love to wear shit until it like literally falls off my body, that I can't wear it anymore. So we're getting to that stage where like it's getting there, you know? My husband's clothes are like that too. I like it. You know? These are like my comfortable clothes. Oh yeah, my outfit is just very punk rock. Yeah. Let's use that as an excuse. I think honestly, when I was in my full like trash metal days, I think my clothes were like way more organized and proper than they are now, honestly. In what city will the meetup be planned to happen? Okay, let me share you some stuff. So this has some of the information. This is still the website from last year. We're keeping the same website and everything like that. That is still the same branding we're going for. We love it, and it's probably going to be in the same location. Yeah. So it's definitely going to be in Köln, right? Which is Cologne for you UK people out there. So it's going to be around Gamescom. It's in Köln, and we will probably be booking the same venue as well. So it will be the same location, but more to be confirmed on that later down the line. Hello, Slate. Good to see you. Good to see you. Man, I hope I get tickets on time. Last time I was on the waiting list. Well, so this time what we're doing is what we are doing, or like what I want to do is I want to be a bit more vocal, because last time it was the first event that we ever done, right? So we there was a lot of unknown stuff happening. We didn't know how many people were going to show up. We didn't know, you know, what the venue was going to be like. We didn't know like anything, right? Now we have a little bit of a better perception of what like organizing events like these is going to be, which means that I can also be more flexible in the way that I'm probably gonna keep X amount of tickets. I haven't figured out the pricing yet, or like the amount of tickets yet, for people that are from Beyond Extent, that even if it gets sold out, we have people from Beyond Extent still coming in. Because Beyond Extend does sponsor, but with like the money from the community, we do sponsor the event as well, or like at least we did last year. So, yeah. So that would be the idea, right? I don't know the amount of them yet. I don't know how many people are even going to show up, from Beyond Extend specifically, but we will see. How many days close to Gamescom are we talking about? So last year we did it on the Wednesday of Gamescom week. So this is the first day that it is. It's not the first official day where like it's open to the public, but it's media day only. That is what we're planning to. So same sort of logic as we did last year. So it will be. Yeah, I think the current preliminary date would be, let me double check. I think that's going to be Wednesday the 26th of August. So yeah. So here, this is the thing, right? Like I'm saying this already so that people know, because last time we didn't really put like anything beforehand out, right? So that if you are thinking about going to Gamescom, then you can keep an eye out for our event as well. Because honestly, I mean, I'm biased, obviously, so you don't have to trust my opinion, but I fucking loved it. How many days is this event, Tim? Oh, the meetup that we're doing is just one evening. But Gamescom itself, Gamescom is an entire week. Because, so you have, I think they changed the name. So you had DevCon before, which happens on Monday, Tuesday, and I think Wednesday as well. And then it basically transitioned into Gamescom, which is more like the consumer-facing side, right? So DevCon is more like developers getting together, giving talks, and it's more like networking for developers. And then straight after, it goes to Gamescom, which is more the consumer side. First time I'm hearing about this event. It is literally the largest event games-related anywhere, I think. It's for sure in Europe. I don't know if there's like any bigger event in America, but for sure in Europe, it's the biggest one. It is massive. I believe Wednesday was Gamescom, but media, dev, and business people could enter from 9 a.m. and the regular people around like 1 p.m. No, I think on Wednesday you can buy a wildcard ticket, because that is what we did for my partner. So as a consumer, you can go into the event, but you will have to, I think you pay double or something like that. There's Gamescom and there's DevCon. Yes, for more information, just go check the Gamescom website, because they changed the naming and all that kind of stuff. So go check it out. Gamescom Dev is for the 23rd until the 25th, so Sunday until Tuesday. No, nice. Maybe in Asia? It might be a little bit unheard of where I'm from, but even people in Asia are aware of it to a certain extent. Well, I think also they do have Gamescom Asia and Gamescom Latin America now, right? So yeah, so they're like expanding globally now, and I think they started doing that from maybe last year or the year before. I'm not sure, but yeah, so they're definitely branching out, and they're definitely like trying to reach like a wider audience. But I can honestly recommend Gamescom. I feel I've gone a couple of years now. How many years in a row have I gone now? 3, I think. And then I went like all the way back in 2016 or something like that. But I can really recommend it, honestly. Whether you are like a game enthusiast, right? I think it's like a mecca for just like game stuff going out and seeing like the massive booths that they put up and like all the hype around the industry. It's fucking amazing, you know? But as a dev even, I love going because it kind of recharges my battery for the next year. Because most of the year, you don't really get exposed to this unbridled optimism and just like freaking hype about our industry, right? Because let's be honest, most of the stuff that you see online is like usually very negatively spun, you know? It's always just complaining, and I don't know, gamers complain about like all the stuff that they complain about. You don't feel any of that. So like I usually during the year I just disconnect and then I go to Gamescom and it's just like it is full on fucking excitement, you know? Second GDC. That other noob is asking, Tim, GDC when? God, GDC is so expensive for Europeans though. That's the only reason why I haven't gone yet, right? It's just because I think I looked at GDC a couple of years ago and like the trip with everything included was gonna be like 10 grand or something like that. Right? If you have to pay for travel and like tickets and everything yourself, plus the food and all that kind of stuff, it would be, I don't know, 5 to 10 grand. That's a lot of money, you know? Don't worry, GDC is expensive for Americans too. Yeah, but here's the thing, right? Like if you think about, I mean, we're not gonna go like all the way down this trap, but like average salaries in like the US compared to like Europe, right? Like that, taking that like equation into account, oh my god. Let alone travel expenses from Europe. Yeah, 100%. It is the thing is, like when I talk to like fellow European game devs specifically, right? The only ones that I talk about that have went are people that either got like a grant through some kind of like scholarship thing that they did with like, I don't know, something, right? Or people that go and give a talk. Without a doubt, is 100% reasonable. Like, I wouldn't go to Gamescom unless I'm already in the area. Yeah, but like Gamescom, I think, God, I can't remember the prices. I think, what did we pay? Like 200 euros or something like that? And that gave me like an all access pass for like the entire week. No, not all access. That's a lie. I didn't have access to the talks. Because honestly, Gamescom itself, really cheap. Public transport is included in your ticket with Gamescom. The only thing that is horrendously expensive with Gamescom is hotels. The hotel cost is always ridiculous. Oh my god. We book our hotel like a year in advance. Am I going for the talks this year? Probably not. Probably not. Like, I don't think there is much interesting stuff happening that I would want to know about, especially in the art field, that is going to be displayed on Gamescom, I think. Yeah, I don't think so. We will be there though. And I do want to do, we are planning to do Tuesday Night Live. What's the drink in hand? Iced coffee. It's not too far to get hotels in nearby cities, though, right? Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's multiple people that travel from like Bonn or from Düsseldorf, for example, that just like grab a hotel there and then they just, yeah, it's like half an hour to an hour train ride or something like that. I think half an hour sometimes. Yeah. But yeah, Gamescom is really good. Gamescom is really good. I'm looking forward to it. I would honestly love to do more stuff. You know, it's just this year we are in like a transition, you know, so hopefully next year, because there's so much, and Lily knows all about this because Lily keeps talking about like certain things going on in certain moments, you know, like there's so much stuff going on that I'm like, oh, I want to go, but I can't at this point because I'm doing a contract, or I don't know, I'm doing some other stuff, you know. Yapping, sorry. No, it's good. It's good. I love it. I love it when people share where they're going to, because there's honestly like a lot of stuff that I wasn't even aware of them. Because I think some people mentioned Indigo as well, which is like a little, I don't know if it's little, I think it's a conference. And now this is something that came over from the UK, where they had the Game Dev Heroes Awards. I was blessed to be nominated by the community like a couple of years ago. Now that nomination show is also moving to Indigo as well, and they're doing like a Benelux version of it, which is Benelux stands for Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg, right? So it's like very, very isolated, very isolated to those three countries. And I was like, should I put like a post up for this? But I always feel weird about that stuff, you know? So I didn't do it. Can I go to Gamescom devs and Gamescom at the same time? Yep, because they're back to back. Because they are back to back. Aru is saying, when I first came to the UK to study in games art, I was blown away by the sheer number of events and game jams that happen here and in Europe. I mean, I was aware of it, but being a part of one was surreal. Yeah. I think it definitely depends on the country. I think the UK is an interesting one, because the UK had a really thriving like event culture around games. And that has like taken a severe dip compared to when I moved to the UK like almost 10 years ago. It is completely different. I think most of the exciting things that I went to, they're no longer around. But I was invited to the first edition of, I think it was like Vertex conference, which was hosted by a publishing brand that did like 3D artists and all that kind of stuff, right? And because I was working with them at the time, I got an invitation to see them, and they ran for like a couple of years, but then they unfortunately also had to shut down. But yeah, like there's still a lot of interesting stuff happening in the UK though. Like honestly, one of my favorite ones that I went to was EGX Rezzed, which was like EGX, which is like a bigger, well-known thing, even though that's also like slowly going down a drain, and they merged with like Comic-Con now this year, so that's also weird. But back then, that was specifically for indie games, which was awesome, and it was like in an amazing location. Yeah, it was really, really cool. And it was cool to see my friends that they started like, or they were a part of like their own indie studio, and I got to see their booth, and they were presenting their game for the first time, you know. And this is when I joined the industry, so I had like a year of experience or something like that, and it kind of felt like it was alive, it was beating, you know, like it was very vibrant to be a part of that culture. And it's still there, you know. I don't want to make it out like it isn't, but it's just, yeah, it's diminished, you know. There's Nordic Game here in Malmo in May, but it's like 750 euros. What? How long is that, Megval? Because I did see some posts about it, which is interesting because they started as a I'm not at Gamescom event, and that then turned into Nordic Game after a while, which I read about that today, which is really interesting. Oh, 26 to, that's 3 days? Jesus, 3 days for 750 euros? That's crazy. I mean, again, it depends what's in the package, right? If they do like a lot of talks and all that kind of stuff, maybe, but yeah. Again, I don't know what's included in that price, right? If it's like literally every day, like fully packed with like talks, then yeah, I could see that working out. I was saying like the last thing I went to was Gamebridge. Yep, I know Gamebridge. I think a bunch of my friends still work with them because yeah, Frontier Developments is in there too. I used to work for Frontier, so I'm assuming that a bunch of people that I used to work with are still a part of that. All my lovely friends working at Frontier. They better add a full spa day to that ticket. Yeah, 750. That's a lot. And this is what I always have to think about, right? Like, is the opportunity worth the cost? You know? And of course, like for students, that balance is going to be different because they usually have student pricing and all that kind of stuff, right? But for example, when I go to Gamescom, I do it for personal reasons, but also for business reasons, right? I go there to network, to talk with like future potential people that we work with for workshops and all that kind of stuff. So I get value and awareness and all that kind of stuff out of it, right? But the tricky thing is that if you want to do that for like a new event, you're not gonna be able to extract the maximum amount of value out of it because you just don't know where all the stuff is. You know, it took me a couple of years to do the same thing with Gamescom. So my old school will usually have volunteers that work there and get free access. Yeah, I was assuming so. The same thing for people in the chat here that live in Germany. The indie game booth, for which I am a part of the jury for, they actually opened their applications today for volunteers. I think you do actually get paid up to a certain amount, and you get access to Gamescom. So yeah, I can send you the link. Don't know if I'm allowed to, but I'm gonna do it anyway. So this is only well, it's in German, so it will be very straightforward. But like, it's only available for people that live in Germany, I think. I don't know if you have to have a German nationality. I'm not sure about that, but yeah, time to get that German citizenship. But I think honestly that would be cool to do something like that. I've never done something like that myself, you know. But if I was a student and I was a bit more aware than back in my student days, I would be doing this stuff for sure. But yeah, oh my god, 3 months until Gamescom. God, time flies. I honestly didn't realize that it's already May. God damn it. I think honestly, the team challenges always erases like a part of my brain, specifically the time conception part, you know, because so much stuff is going on, so much different things that I need to take care of. So, but oh my god, was it worth it? I will share like another thing in the chat as well, because this is something that we shared today. I did a polish pass on the sizzle reel that we just announced, which was fucking amazing. Sorry for me swearing, but hey, come on, if something justifies it, it's gonna be like the team challenges, you know. So let me share a link to the video if people haven't seen that yet. But yeah, Galazar is asking, can I go there to get more network and maybe a job feature? And maybe, a future job in Gamescom? Yeah. I mean, there is a whole business and recruitment and all that kind of stuff. Like, that's all built into the Gamescom platform. Where I know people that secure like their next clients at Gamescom. I also know students that go there to interact with professionals, you know. Some people do like very impromptu portfolio reviews and all that kind of stuff there too. I am still debating. I do want to do in-person portfolio reviews. I think that could be like really cool to do, like in person at Gamescom. I don't know how, what, or when, you know, but I think that would be like freaking awesome to do. Beyond Jam when? What? We just had an RJam. Come on. Next one is going to be in October though, so I'm looking forward to that. I've got like a list of stuff that I want to do already. Oh my god, I'm excited. Lydia is saying networking is always worth it. You might not get a job of it right away, but it does help. Yeah, it's more like networking is more like planting the seed for your future success. You know, that's the way that I usually look at it. Where, you know, immediately nothing really comes out of the box, or like maybe it can, right? There's always that opportunity to do so. But I think what you're doing. So, for example, me and my partner, we had an interview with Larian, right? We talked to one of their recruiters, and I think it is always better to be able to say, hey, remember us from like Gamescom 2025? And I'm sure they do, right? That you can use that as, hey, are there like new openings, new opportunities, whatever, right? That is always going to do better than having to, I don't know, hey, remember me out of a pile of like blank CVs, you know? So yeah, that for us in the same instance, that didn't help us in the immediate future, you know? But we were fully aware of that. So we were like, hey, look, we're just gonna talk to them. And then we're gonna just see where that goes, you know? And then we'll keep in touch, kind of thing. How would I apply for the next team challenge? Aru is already helping out. Probably disclose applications early October or late September. Yep, that's exactly what's going to happen. We will send out a bunch of stuff with an open application, and then yeah, we will start accepting people and start the next team challenge. So yeah, applications usually open up like a week or 2 weeks before we actually start the team challenge itself. But hey, if you're in the community, if you're subscribed to our LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff, you stay up to date. Hello, Zayad. Good to see you. Slate is thinking about joining the October one. Let's go. Let's go. We still need to do our post-mortem. So usually what we do is me and Sunny sit down and we look through all the feedback and we compile all the data, and then we see like, okay, what do we need to fix for next time, right? One thing that is interesting that I literally just asked everyone about today is how much time people spend on average per week working on the challenge. Because we've never really asked that question, and we've got some like pretty interesting feedback already. Aru was saying, one of my friends saw our team's artwork and they told me that's why you're rejecting my invitations to play Overwatch recently. Oh yeah, it's a freaking good reason. We're watching Whip Wednesday in the server. Let's go! Thank you, Stia. Oh, I do wanna. My calendar is slowly but surely clearing up. I do want to hang out with the community more. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe do like a chill night together or something like that. Shout out server chat. Let's go. But yeah, interesting responses. So yeah, that will be the next thing. We're gonna talk about like all the outcome, all the feedback that we've gotten. I appreciate all of the feedback. I really appreciate it from all of you. And then we're gonna see what we're gonna change for the next one. But yeah, I think currently the current average of the time that people spend working on the team challenge per week sits around 35 hours. So yeah, we will definitely discuss that number going forward. because we have to potentially like set some realistic expectations for the people that are getting into a challenge. So we'll see what we need to do with that. I miss the BE parties, BE gaming session. Oh god, yeah. The Jackbox games, they were always fun. Right. Okay, for people that are new here, first of all, welcome. I should have introduced myself in the beginning. I always do that like randomly in the middle. But this is my weekly slot where I give the entire community, if they want to, a little bit of feedback. I've been in the industry for about 10 years now, working as an environment artist. So if you have any questions about that, anything that you want to know about getting into the industry, how to make a portfolio, anything like that, feel free to fire away in the chat and then we can have a discussion. But in the meantime, let me switch over to some feedback. So people that are a part of the community, you know the drill. If you want to raise your hand, and then we will go through them in sequence. Fairmora is saying 35 hours per week. Isn't that a little bit high? Well, that is one of the things that we're going to be talking about, right? Like, what is our ideal range to be within, right? Because there are going to be... So here's the thing, right? Like it's always going to be a difficult discussion because we cannot stop people from doing more work than they signed up to do, right? And what is going to happen in a team challenge is it becomes a pressure cooker where the pressure of being surrounded by 4 other teammates that potentially have more time to spend than you is inevitably going to cause you to also want to spend more time on the project, right? So there's a lot of incentives and a lot of pressure trying to increase that number already, right? That's just a normal part of a challenge. So yeah, we're definitely going to have to discuss it because I don't know if it's too high. Because, well, let's try to reason through it, right? Because like let's say it is too high. I don't think there's a reasonable thing that we can do as organization to stop people from putting in that amount of time. Because I think what's going to happen is, let's say we set a cap. You know, we just say, hey, a cap of, I don't know, let's say 40 hours a week, right? We don't really have metrics to track that. There's no way that we can get metrics to track that anyway. And then even if we were to have metrics, then people are just going to lie about the metrics anyway. Right? So it's a really difficult position where I think some sort of crunch, even though we do our best to, even in the kickoff, right? I say, hey, go smaller, go higher quality, think about this. This is the rough time estimation for some stuff like this, right? Teams are still going to be way more ambitious than we tell them to, and they're going to always underestimate how much time something takes. So yeah, it is, but it's 100% a concern of ours that we want to keep some sort of like measurement of how much they're putting in time though. So it is a concern. It is just, yeah, where and what can we do around putting a framework around it, right? Hello, everyone. Hello, Blanco Blancho. Good to see you. My main interest is in stylized environment, especially inspired by games like Fortnite, Overwatch, and Genshin Impact. And my goal is to work on projects with a similar art style in the future. Awesome. I had a question regarding portfolio direction. Would it be better to focus entirely on stylized 3D work, or is it important to include some realistic environment and props in the portfolio as well? If you 100% know that you want to only work on Fortnite and Overwatch and Genshin Impact, and that is the thing that you want to do, I am always in favor of chasing that and making that your thing rather than trying to do a thing that the industry is looking for. However, what that means is that you are going to lose out on opportunities that you are not building content for, right? You have to keep that in mind. you can basically build whatever content you want in whatever style you want, so that you can have like a pretty okay overall portfolio and maybe get you hired into, I don't know, let's say Call of Duty, right? But for me, I think what is more important is that you get fulfillment out of the job that you do, and that you get to hone your craft at the same time that you're doing your professional work, right? Because let's say as a stylized artist and you want to work on stylized stuff and you get to work on Call of Duty, you're not going to like it no matter how much you try, because it's not your thing. So that's where I'm always in favor of sacrificing a bigger market that you can apply to and really hone your skills to a more niche market. And it's interesting. I think for the longest time, if we look at industry trends right now, there's a lot of AAA companies that are looking at like, hey, this AAA crazy stuff that we're doing, like always trying to go for like more realistic. I think that's kind of died down a bit, because it just becomes unfeasible. Development budgets are not flexible like they were like a couple of years ago. So I think we're going to see more stylized work. For example, Guerrilla Games making like their stylized inspired Horizon Zero Dawn game, right? That is not necessarily because they want to. It might be a part of it, but that is because the market has decided that for them, because they can't keep making these like really expensive AAA things. They need to find a way to shave time off, So I hope that was helpful. Ashay is asking, please give me advice for environment, how to work on it for portfolio. Sure. I have like 10 to 20 other streams that are purely about portfolio advice. I would advise you to check them all out. That's probably going to be way more helpful. Slate is saying, as an environment artist, what kind of portfolio pieces stand out the most? Is it better to show a variety of work like hero props and materials, texturing and studies, or mainly focus on full environments? It's a good question. So I wouldn't even focus on those things specifically. I would try to break them down in what they are showcasing, right? So, for example, with a full environment, what you're going to be making is you're going to be making trim sheets. You're going to be making titleables. You're going to be working with modular kits. You're going to be working with like all that kind of stuff, right? It is not necessarily about like, oh, do they want to see an environment or do they want to see a prop? It is more about like, what are those underlying skills that you're showing off? Those are more important. Because that's why I keep hammering on, you don't have to make a full open world, just make a small diorama, because the exact same skills are going to be showcased in those two things, right? But what I always want to see in someone's portfolio, if I were to put myself back in a hiring position, I would want to see a strong focus on what you want to do, whether that is, like building hero props, or building your environment, or doing something with trim sheets or something like that. Try to focus in those terms, right? Basically, a way to think about it: go look for open applications, see what they're asking for, and use that as not a checklist, because that makes it like black and white, right? But use that as like a guiding principle to what you want to showcase in your portfolio. And I'm talking about like multiple applications, right? Not just one, but pick like 10 to 20, and then see if you can find like comparable things and use that as like sort of a checklist. Because yeah, I think what I want to see, right? If I'm looking at a candidate, I want to see an interesting, unique element, let's say a prop, right? And especially because I'm hiring for like an environment artist position, I want to see a prop. I want to see a small scene or a diorama or something like that that is gripping. It has some storytelling into it. And then optionally, and I think this is already a stretch for most people, Well, before I go into that, so let's rewind. So what I want to see is something that tells a story, is technically well executed, it has a high quality bar for itself, and potentially as a cherry on top, also keeps in mind games like level design, how you set up your collisions, how you keep in check like navigation of a person, like all that kind of stuff, right? That's why I'm saying most people not there yet. That is currently a gap that is not filled by many people. Shazar saying, a scene which demonstrates your technical and creative competency with breakdowns. Can I hire this person and trust that they'll be able to do the job and rise to the challenges of production? I mean, yeah, but that's like pretty vague, right? Like that is not really saying a lot. You know what I mean? That almost sounds like a reverse like application. I mean, honestly, I don't think I did like necessarily like that good of a job in my explanation. Now that I'm thinking about it. But yeah, technically you're right, but like you need to see about you. I need to see what makes you unique, and that needs to shine through the entire portfolio, right? Because the thing that I don't like is that people make good, competent work, but they're kind of just doing like good, competent work. You know what I mean? It is just like it's okay, but nothing really is engaging. You know, nothing really stands out. Or it doesn't have like this impact where I'm like, oh my god, that person really loves this, you know, or really loves this. For example, you're just asking the question of like, hey, I don't give a shit about like realistic art. I only want to make stuff that looks like Overwatch, you know? That could be a thing. But yeah. When it comes to environment portfolio pieces, sorry, I'm just skipping. I'll come back to your question if I skipped it. But so when it comes to environment portfolio pieces, my mentors usually advise not to worry about optimization and how it feels to play in. Do you have the opposite opinion then? No. So this is what I mean, right? Like I think your mentors are correct because usually making something high quality with the right kind of workflows already takes so much energy and so much power to get it to a state where it is industry ready that we don't even get to talk about like optimization or like navigation meshes or collision and all that kind of stuff, right? Even though those things are probably way easier to learn and a bit more dependent on the workflow that you use, right? So that's the thing. As an environment artist, I want to see a story. You know, I want to see like a cool focus point that tells a story that is beautifully executed with the right technical ability, right? That is what I want to see. And then if you then showcase like, hey, I thought about the level design because in this section it's smaller to kind of give you like a sense of, oh my god, there's foreboding things going on, all that kind of stuff. Then it's like, oh my god, what the hell? Like we need to get this person immediately. Because you're not only thinking about your discipline, you're already considering other disciplines as well. And that's a skill that not a lot of people have, right? But you can't build that skill, or like you shouldn't be displaying that skill if you don't know how to do the high quality and technically well executed stuff first, right? Because that is the more important stuff by far. On my last project, there were no hero props, just large-scale elements. Maybe next project should be different. Well, no, here's the thing, right? Like, I think you can design, and this is why I love to talk about it in a way where it's almost like a checklist, right? Where a hero prop is one check on that checklist, right? Like a hero prop, baking, unique texturing, unique UVs, those things. They are 4 different checks on the checklist. You can hit that by making a separate hero prop, you know? 2 weeks, make a separate hero prop, you have all those 4, right? Or you design a diorama around the hero prop and you have those 4 same checkboxes, you know, plus a couple of extra ones because now you're doing a little bit of storytelling and all that kind of stuff on top of it too, right? But that also means that you're going to be spending more time because there's more checkboxes in the project, right? So that's the way that I see it. Like, if you're spending a lot of time on making something that's really big, then you kind of want it to hit more checkboxes because you're spending so much time on things, right? Whereas, let's say in your case, like you have your project that has no hero props, it is really easy to add, well, it's comparatively easy compared to a full environment to add a hero prop to your portfolio, right? And sure, there might be a question where it's like, I would still love to see the 2 combined, right? But if I know that you can do them individually, like putting those 2 together is not that difficult of a thing, you know? Beauty is asking a portfolio question. We need to focus on quality and do small things, but with higher quality. But from a recruiter perspective, would you even click on a proper diorama if there's an artist with big environment scenes? Yes, you would. Because here's the thing. From an ArtStation perspective, right? If you're going for likes and clicks and all that kind of stuff, you will probably get more when you have more ambitious pieces, right? Those ambitious pieces don't mean that you will get the job. They are completely detached from each other, you know? That's why I try to, when I gave my explanation, right? Of all the checkboxes that I wanted to see, none of them were about scope. Because it's all about quality, right? If I know that you can execute on a high level and you can do it consistently between multiple pieces on your portfolio, and maybe they're all like small dioramas, right? So let's say they're all just corners of a room. I can make the safe assumption that you can take that knowledge and you can make an entire room. That's not going to be too difficult, right? Again, if the technical aspects are there, if you're using trim sheets and tilables and all that kind of stuff, right? Me then going, oh, if I give you a little bit more time, you can make a whole room. That's not a difficult assumption to make, right? Because it's not the way, if you're going for big AAA companies, right? Consider the way that they find out about your work. Most of the time, they don't go to ArtStation. They just look through their applications. And if your applications stand out in whatever way it can, that's what they're going for, right? Because you can have people with like bigger environments, but if they suck, doesn't matter, right? It still sucks. I had a question. When you have like 5 small props but a lot of different functions, it is still okay to share one UV? 5 small props, but totally different functions. There's a bunch of considerations there. I don't think the function of the prop is gonna be the deciding factor in when you can or can't use them in a single UV, right? The thing that decides whether you can use something in a single UV or not depends on where they're placed in the game. Because let's say I have, I don't know, I have a mug, I have a controller, and I have a plant pot here, right? And I put them all in the same UV. If they're always gonna be in Tim's room, you're fine, right? However, if they're then also gonna be in like, if let's say my controller is gonna be in like a different room, you know, with one prop, it doesn't really matter that much. But now we're pulling in data from a prop that is probably only like 20% on like a single UV, and we're still pulling in the rest of the UVs and the textures, right? So if you want flexibility, it is easier to have smaller props be separate than on one shared UV. So if you reliably know in a video game context if they're always going to be shared, put them on one UV. If they're not, have them on separate UVs. Plus, here's another thing, right? We talked about one project. What if you're building a studio or you're building an asset library and now I have like all these random things on just like one UV and I only want to use my mug in the next project? Then I also need to redo the textures because all this other junk is on there too, right? So that's why it's usually easier to separate them all out, because that gives you more flexibility for the future. Do you think with each environment piece it should be getting bigger and bigger? Nope. Nope. Size doesn't matter. Size does not matter. I want to see it getting better in quality. And if you, and this is actually an interesting decision, right? So if I look at your portfolio and you decide that, hey, I made this big environment, but I had to make so many sacrifices and make it like mediocre, and then you decide to go smaller, I would love to see that rather than the opposite way, where like you're making bigger stuff now and the quality becomes worse. No, it doesn't have to get bigger. I think the quality bar that you should set for yourself is try to make it a believable world, right? I think that is the ambition. But you can make a believable world with something really small, you know? I took you through this presentation, right? I'll bring it up again. So if we look at this presentation here, let me switch over. I still haven't finished this, by the way. All those pieces, they're small. Nautila, you gotta go, but you updated your question. Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Nautila. Have fun. So all these environments, they are small, but they don't feel small, right? That should be the ambition. The ambition is not to make something that is like a massive open world with like massive landscapes and all that kind of stuff. That is honestly not where you should be aiming for. That is nice if you can get to it and you have the passion for it, right? But if we're talking purely about portfolio work, completely optional. Like I would rather see a bunch of high quality stuff where you've made a bunch of stuff yourself and you're challenging yourself with everything you do. This is going to be way more impactful and also way quicker to make a portfolio out of, you know? So yeah, good questions. But yeah, it is never the goal to just go bigger for bigger's sake. Right, let's do one more question. Do we have one? Yes, Tadine is asking a question and then we'll dive into some feedback. So how can the application stand out when your work is on ArtStation? I mean, it's kind of a self-explanatory question, right? Because think about this, right? I send in an application, or like, sorry, you send in an application to me. I am not going to go to ArtStation first, then look at a bunch of other people, and then decide if I'm going to go with you or not, right? I'm just going to look at your work in isolation, right? So your work just needs to be good enough to stand on its own 2 feet at the moment that I'm looking at it, right? Because I'm looking at things in isolation. That's the thing. If you want to stand out on ArtStation, without making an application, that would be a different question, right? Then you would honestly have to look at how can you drive a balance between the work that you do and the volume that you make it out of. But that should not be the goal. I want to preface that already. Your your portfolio is not a social media profile. So I would just focus on the high quality content and just go with that. Yeah, I hope that answered the question today. Thank you. Also, in the end, the customer mostly will look at the quality. Yeah, I mean, they will look at the quality first, and then we'll start digging to see if you're reliable, right? Because sometimes quality can sort of be deceptive now. Where you especially see this with nanite elements, right? Where it looks graphically impressive, but then you start doing some digging and it kind of falls apart on the technical aspects or the way that they rendered things, or you know, like sometimes work just falls apart after doing like deeper digging. But yeah, I think quality should be the goal in the beginning. Then you can kind of split hairs about like, oh, but this person can do X where this other person can do Y. What do we need more for the company? Okay, we're gonna go with this person, right? But yeah. Sorry, we kind of skipped the initial hands raising part, right? So let's have a look. So yeah, this is gonna get really confusing. So we had Powertail, Zayad, Top G, and Jack of Diamonds, and then Victoria. Sorry for the double hand raise. So yeah, who was it? Like, we might as well just go with the second one. Okay, we're just gonna go with the second one. So Powertail first, then Mekval, then Zayad, Top G, Victoria, and then Jack. Okay, cool. Galazar is asking the last question. I'm making a diorama. Is that good too? Yep. Yep. The examples that were just on screen, they were all dioramas. You can make a diorama feel like it's actually way bigger than just a diorama. So, again, dioramas are good. Okay, Powertail. Where are you in the list? Right. So you had a question, and I wrote it down as bang for buck storytelling because you were concerned about the stuff that we talked about last week, where you didn't know how to add the things that we talked about without necessarily like upscoping the whole thing, right? Think about the second part of the discussion that we had, right? Where I would just literally open the door, this door that we have here. Right? So open the door so that we can kind of peek in and there's something happening here, right? And then you can honestly just fill it with like all the stuff that you have here, just make something out of it and give us something, right? Give us something to look at. Give us something that draws our attention and sort of tells a story, right? That doesn't mean that you have to make like a bunch of unique stuff, but it's looking at the things that already exist in your scene and how you can make better use out of them. That was the whole point of it, right? But how you do that, that is totally up to you, right? You first have to decide. What is important for the scene, or like what kind of story or something that I want to tell. And then you can still go with like, okay, I kind of want to tell this. How can I do that in the cheapest and most affordable way, right? Let's see. So to keep it short, I don't want to add a lot of scope to the project. I want to focus on executing the scene with quality and getting a portfolio ready by the end of June, around 2 months. And on the other hand, I do want to make sure that I have a focal point and a bit of interest in the story. How do I achieve that without adding to the scope? I think honestly, the last two conversations that we had, or like last week's conversation, is still a pretty good example though. Like we probably talked about like adding a character in, right? A character I would honestly just get from Fab, get any free character you can find. I don't know, do something with them, right? Like you can even just rotate them around and just give them like a bunch of shabby clothes. Do the cheapest thing that you can. And then try to make that work, right? Or if you don't have a character or that is not an option, then we'll have to do something with the scene itself, right? And that's why I keep pointing to this door, because it is a good focal point. It's not obstructed by anything else, and it kind of is like the second best option that I have. Because otherwise, if we don't do that, then what are we gonna do? Right? How are we gonna make the scene interesting? There are questions to that answer that I just asked, but those answers have to come from you, not from me. Does that make sense? That's why I'm kind of giving you options, but you still have to decide what is the most feasible for you, right? So yeah, the cheapest thing would be to open the door, reuse assets, and then from those assets, make a story somehow, right? And the reason why I am being like somewhat vague is because I think that honestly, this thought process and the thing that you're gonna go through now is at the core of making every single thing in your career going forward. Because sometimes, I mean, not sometimes, all the times, we have restrictions and deadlines, and then it's just you have to come up with a way of, hey, I am the creative on this project. We are the artists in most cases, right? How can we make this really interesting with minimal amount of effort, right? That is our job. So it is good for you to already try and get into that mode, and then think about how you can do that, right? And this is the thing, don't be afraid to break stuff, right? Open Unreal, open that door, cram some stuff into it, zoom back out, see how it looks. Don't like it. Okay, we're gonna try something else, right? Sometimes you have to go back to the drawing board a bit and break some stuff so that you can rebuild it better. Yeah, I think this could be like a very sensible option though. Like opening this door, and this is just a start, right? This section here. This is just a start, because then I would think about like, okay, how can we accentuate this more, right? So let's say there's something happening like inside of this door. Cool. How can we then accentuate what is happening, right? Maybe that means, I don't know, like more barrels at the front. Maybe there's like, I don't know, something happening with like loose tiles. I don't know, just like a couple of little mugs here, just like someone's chair outside. I don't know, it depends so much on the story that you want to tell, right? But that's what I mean. You can do a lot of stuff, and then we can decide like, okay, what is happening inside first? So that will be step one. And then how do we set dress the outside to kind of help support the inside, right? That's the way that I would look. And then already by adding like a couple of assets, we're already drawing the eye more towards this place as well. But again, we have to figure out, for example, in this specific case, right? We have to figure out what we're going to put inside the house first and how much we're going to see of it, and then we'll figure out the rest. I think part of it, I'm just so caught up with making a mistake here in the next stretch. I just got to have fun with it again. There's no mistakes. There's honestly no mistakes here, right? And I think this is the real power that we bring to the table as creatives, right? Let's assume someone else breaks it. How do we fix it? Right? Because a lot of the decision making that happens in like a real production cycle is also like, hey, we have this issue. What are the options, right? And then sometimes the options also come from other disciplines, but sometimes it might also come from us, right? Like, hey, this could be like a genuine like production issue, right? Where it's like we have this really cool scene, but there's nothing happening in it. How would you solve it as an artist in a production cycle, right? And then you can even say like the restriction is we can't build anything new, right? That could be a restriction. But yeah, cool stuff. Hopefully that was helpful. But this is, yeah, the reason why I love talking about this stuff is because this is literally like a day-to-day thing almost, you know? Especially if you're in the thick of it, you're in between milestones and like all that kind of stuff. This decision making, this is where the juice is, you know? This is where we get our money. If you can't get a character, have them turning a bucket out on the street in front of the door. Yeah, see, you can do a whole bunch of stuff, right? You could have a door broken into, a thief has broken in. Yep, these are all good options, right? This is the thing. The options are endless. You can do whatever you want, you know, whatever honestly comes up in your head, you can probably do. It just depends on the tools and the assets and like all the stuff you have available to you, right? Appreciate the challenge and thinking process, Tim. Needed this? Yeah, go for it, dude. Go for it. Awesome. Next up was Mekval, and Mekval's on screen already. Mekval, what happened with the lighting? Dude, I loved your previous iteration so much. I mean, this one also has a little bit of potential, but I think immediately it's really harsh, right? It is almost like you're pointing like arrows at like the main focal point, but it's so obvious that it's just like, it's a bit too fake, it's a bit too made, right? So I don't really like this sort of lighting. Fair is saying too much contrast. Yeah, that's a part of it too. I mean, you get that with like the golden hour, right? Where like the sun is about to go down and you got like long harsh shadows and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't really think it's working here. Not necessarily. I think also from like a color perspective, right? I would always look to balance like a really harsh orange with like a nice blue or something like that, right? So that I have something that balances it out. Because in here, especially with some of the subtle fog that you have going on, it kind of washes everything out and kind of makes everything feel too orange, in my opinion. But yeah, a couple of other things with this new lighting setup. It kind of calls out like a texture pass on the bridge, right? There's also some textures that are still missing here. Again, this is probably a work in progress, all this stuff, right? So I mean, they're not missing, but they just need like a little bit of a push, right? Because you got some textures at the bottom, but then at the top, there's nothing happening just yet. So that needs to be done. The textures here still feel pretty basic. This we already talked about. That's the lighting conversation. The values are also like really overblown. This is because it's really white in an environment where nothing is supposed to be like really white, you know? I think this would be something where you would expect like a lot more fade, you know, because this almost looks like it's like a fresh coat of paint, which is probably not going to be happening here, right? And even if it does, and this is also a good way to think about it for everyone else too, right? Even if this had a fresh coat of paint, how do we then make it feel like it is still somewhat interesting to look at, right? Because we always want to gamify and exaggerate and all that kind of stuff to do things. Yeah. Oh, and also this path behind it, like it's almost invisible now, which was like really cool in your previous shot. That kind of gave like the whole shot more dynamic. And what you basically done is basically said like, hey, look, all the stuff that matters is here. Right? That's basically what you're saying. Like, this matters. The rest of it is just a big wall stuff. You don't need to be looking there. There's nothing interesting happening, really. Yeah. There's some quick bits of feedback. All the objects in the scene are nearly of equal scale. Shazar is saying this, so no big, medium, small, which would be nice too. Yeah. That would be something once we have like the core issues here, especially with this lighting setup, right? That's something that I think we talked about last week, where you have to have those like medium shapes and like the small shapes. That stuff is really good. That's always nice to watch out for, like the big, medium, small. Got some good references for that once I start texturing it for the building. Nice one. Okay, cool. Yeah, nice one, man. Keep it going. Yeah. I would have a look at realistic lighting scenarios that maybe go into like the beautiful magic hour lighting a bit more, you know, instead of just like harsh orange. Like, try to infuse like more of a color gradient in there. Pewdie is saying, I hope you have a lighting backup. Yeah, he does. He does. The worst mistake I made is changing the lighting and not being able to come back. Yeah. Well, here's another thing. That's why I take like daily screenshots. Because it allows me to go back to earlier lighting setups and then try to replicate them again, right? So like, even if I don't have like the actual technical lighting setup anymore, I still have a picture that I can reference back to when I liked it more. Not ideal, but it still works. Cool. Thank you, McFell. Aro is asking, it's a bit of a different question. When trying to reimagine a 2D concept art already done by an artist into a 3D environment, does the storytelling matter? Or how close does a 3D version have to be to the concept? It depends on what you do with it, right? For me, I always loved using rough concepts for the specific reason that I could put my own spin on it, right? But this is not something that I would recommend to people that are getting into building their first environment or something like that, right? Because it's just way easier to just be like, hey, look, I'm going to rebuild this concept. Everything is there. I don't have to think about it. I'm just going to focus on the execution, right? Because in the beginning, the execution already takes up a lot of brain power. So what you want to do is you want to focus on the execution first. Once you got the execution down, then you can start experimenting with like, okay, how can I make things that are more mine, you know, and experiment with, I don't know, your own art style or something like that, right? I mean, I wouldn't go as broad with like your own art style in the beginning, but you can experiment a bit more. But here's the thing, like what is a good thing to try is if you notice that there is something fundamentally wrong with the concept, there's nothing wrong with changing it. Right? Because sometimes people, they assume that the concept art is the ground truth, you know? But it is not. What I would do with a concept, if you don't have access to talking to the person or finding out like breakdowns of the concept and all that kind of stuff, I would actually try to distill the concept. I would try to distill the concept into where that concept art came from, you know, because that's going to give you a better understanding of all those different elements, and that's going to help you build it in 3D as well. Don't underestimate how difficult it can be for maintaining visual cohesion without a concept or reference database. Oh, references you always need, you know, like even if you're not using a concept, you always need a reference, always. It's interesting how many people that still don't believe referencing, or like they feel like referencing is cheating or something like that. It's not. Everyone does this. From like the most well-known principal artists that you know to like juniors just getting into the industry. Use reference. But yeah, you're 100% right though, Shazar. Like a lot of people underestimate it still. And they try to do a lot of stuff by themselves way too quickly. Including myself. Let's have a look. So Zayad. Oh, we are actually on your page. Okay, a couple of quick things here. Your main question though. Your main question was, is this good enough to post? And again, it is one of those questions that I am always hesitant to answer because that is not my decision to make. Because there's so many contextual things that I need to keep in mind when you ask me that question, that it is really difficult for me to do that on a live stream, you know? What I would say is if this is a stuff that you're happy about posting, I would do a final pass on like, okay, is this really the best that I can put out, right? So that's why I have like a couple of questions here. So first of all, this shot, really good. There's a couple of blockout misses in here still, remove those, but this shot is really good. I think you can be really proud of that. I'm really happy with it too. There's definitely stuff that we can improve for next things, right? But for this one, it's really, really good. And then you have some additional shots. I think this one is interesting. This one is kind of, it's okay, but it seemed the composition is kind of weird and it's kind of offset and it's kind of focusing me on like a thing I have no clue what it is, right? So it's interesting. It has potential. But the main question that I have is like, what does it show? Because I have no clue, right? I mean, it's a book with like an amulet, but like, what is that supposed to mean in relationship to the environment, right? No clue. The lighting on this one, honestly, not great. I wouldn't do that. So that's something, if you want to work on that, that's fine, but that is not ready. The main elements in lighting here, way too harsh. The fire's way too harsh. They don't cast enough light. The contrast with the colors, it's not that great yet. So that needs more iteration. This shot is pretty interesting. I don't know about like your focal point literally being obscured by like a bunch of weeds, but I like the idea about it. The only thing that I would say is like maybe moving some of those reeds to like the left and the right to kind of give you a little bit more space, you know, but they're interesting foreground elements. It's just the most interesting stuff here is just literally obscured by like a bunch of stuff sticking through it. So that's not great. But this has potential though. I would keep this and just do like some small tweaks, move them to the side. I think that can be cool. This one here needs a bit of color balance between the textures. For example, these ferns are more saturated than these guys here. And then these urns are like super saturated, right? So there's all kind of like saturation differences happening between different surfaces, which I don't think is that great. And then we got the last one here. Again, thinking about what it's trying to show me, right? It's kind of meh. Like I don't know what you're trying to show me. It's just like here's a bunch of random pots and some bunch of random foliage, right? I know that I'm being very critical, right? But this is literally the thinking that you have to do. Like, if it's not showing me anything interesting, I don't want to see it in your portfolio. It is as simple as that, right? So yeah, I also wouldn't do that one. Yeah, this is the thing. I want to put an emphasis on this, right? Like a main render, one really good render with just breakdowns below it, explaining how you did this. That's all you need for your portfolio, right? I would rather see if the choice is you're showing me something really focused with breakdowns compared to showing me a lot of stuff that is unfocused with breakdowns, I would always pick option 1. Always pick option 1. Jack Diamonds is saying, lighting fundamentals with Salvador Sanchez. This one was pure gold. Watched it a few times. Anyone working with multiple lighting scenarios should definitely be taking a look at this. Yeah, shout out to Salvador. Right. Hopefully that was helpful. You got some good stuff going on here. Focus on the good, discard the bad, you know? Be very, very critical about your work and only stick to the good stuff. I was planning to animate these shots and combine them in one vid. Same question. Is that gonna make your portfolio better or worse? If you're uncertain or worse, don't do it. If you're 100% sure that it's gonna better your chances to get a job, do it. That's the thing. It has to be that strict. If there's any concern, don't do it. Star saying you should show off the boat more, considering it looks like you've had the most sculpt work. I would do that in the breakdown though, right? I think if let's imagine that these... Okay, let's imagine that these 3... Okay, let's be very upfront, right? Let's say this is the main render, so this is render number 1. This is render number 2. Right, so this is render number 2. And then maybe render number 3 if the composition gets fixed, right? Those 3 are like your beauty renders. And then what you do is then you're like, okay, cool. I'm gonna take this and do a full breakdown of it. Right? I would then show that off as like a separate thing in a breakdown rather than trying to force, I don't know, like a beauty render or something like that out of it, you know? Because you're gonna show... What I don't want to happen is that the composition or your scene at large is going to be put in such a way that it's almost trying to fulfill the purpose of a breakdown, right? But I definitely agree with what you're saying though. Like, you should show it off more. I'm just making the argument that should be shown in like the breakdown, you know, like really show it off, like separate it out, zoom in, have like a couple of interesting shots about it, and then yeah, make it into like one image, one image that shows you all the cool stuff on the boat, you know, with the textures and the wireframe and all that kind of stuff. Cool. Thank you, Zayed. Really cool stuff. I do like that shot with the boat though. The boat with the reeds. I think that's a good addition. I really like that one. Right. Next one. PUBG. There we go. Not made any notes yet. And I think some of the same stuff can apply here too, right? We just talked about less is more. And when my first gut instinct, when I saw these things, these individual shots, they just don't hold up. Like, they really don't. Like, and that means you have a choice, right? Either you cut them, or you spend additional time, like trying to make them better to be shown off on your portfolio, right? Because I think the best one that has a lot of potential with like fewer like easy fixes is probably going to be the second one. Then potentially the third one. I'm still not sure about this one though. Yeah, and I wouldn't do this one. Let me actually go through your thread. I don't know. That was even a part of the question here. So your question was, is there anything in the scene that feels too distracting? Also, I decided to remove the hallway shot as it felt like I added too much to the scope. Finally. I am I'm holding in what I want to say. But yeah, I'm glad that you did. Yeah, so I agree. This one doesn't need to be on here. I also think that this one doesn't need to be on here, honestly. I think this one is pretty cool. I like this one. This one has some potential. But then that means that if you're, this is the thing, right? If you do detail shots, you need to make them detailed enough to be worthy of detail shots, you know? So what I would say is that you can't have stuff like this, right? Like where this little edge here, that is just like a plane with a bevel and then just like the titleable wraps around it. Can't have that. We need to put the attention to detail in the detail shots, right? Because yeah, a detail shot that's missing details. So yeah, that would mean probably some POM or something like that. So periodic exclusion mapping. This bevel needs to be fixed. That just needs to be like a nice little trim that kind of goes around it. And then, yeah, what can we do more here, right? Like, what can we do more to get the attention on this? I plan to sculpt the stone to put on the main floor. That is one option. I think honestly, you have the tools already to make that work, right? It's just that you need to put in the time to actually do it. So what I mean by that is that you can literally just have a strip of your titleable kind of just like as a trim sheet on that edge, and that could already work by itself. Is that going to be the best option? No. I think if you plan to sculpt the stone to put on the main floor, I think that's good. But yeah. Keep that in mind. Nadar is saying the wide shot looks really nice though. If you spend a little bit more time on the texture and the detail, they could look great. Yeah, I think the wide shot is definitely the money maker, right? That's where the most amount of time went to. And that's really, that is visible. I think I do have to agree with Shazar. Like really, the main thing now is, okay, how can we level up the materials? How can we really get like nice material definition, especially on the floor, right? Because the floor really feels like it's really flat at the moment. It doesn't have any real detail to it. Like it doesn't have, you know, what you expect from like a nice cobblestone. Just really feels flat. That can be normals. That can be parallax exclusion mapping. That can be the nanite displacement. Whatever you need to do to make it look nice, you know, and whatever tools you want to use for that, that's totally fine. But yeah, then it becomes like really focusing on like all the details, right? Yeah, textures are a good shout to go first. And then really looking at like, okay, what does look too basic? Right, so for example, these pieces of cloth, there's a lot of wear and tear and like damage going on in the entire scene, but then these pieces of cloth feel pretty basic still. Hold on, because I got something to say about the door as well. So. Floor texture needs love. This door also stands out for just being... Yeah, texture pass on the door. Normally, yeah, you don't really see like that sort of pattern, right? Like usually exterior doors are like lacquered and that kind of gives like a unifying effect on the whole thing. So there's something about that door that really stands out at the moment. So that could use like a proper texture pass. Cool stuff is happening here. Like to see it. And then this thing in the foreground. Needs love, or it needs hiding. And when I say hiding, I don't mean physically. What you can do in these cases is play around with depth of field, for example, right? That is a way to, especially with foreground elements, to kind of just blur them out. That could be a way of doing it, right? Because in certain cases, like honestly, sometimes I don't want to do stuff. Then what I'll do is I'll just rotate it to the left so that it's a bit more out of focus, and then just add like a little bit of depth of field, or maybe put it close to the camera so that it's like nicely blurred out. And done. You don't even need to finish it, you know? No one's gonna care about it then. And sometimes that's what you have to do, right? That is what I mean with these like nice creative decisions that we can make, right? Like not everything needs to be finished. Sometimes you just make it work in whatever way you can, right? Yeah, the main thing. There's still a lot of noise coming from the foliage, though. That is something that really concerns me still. There's still a lot of noise in general going on. And it's coming... Like, maybe I'm like a sucker for this stuff. Like, maybe I'm like allergic to all of this. But you still have a lot of noise coming from the foliage. A lot of the textures too. So for example, if we look at the vase, that vase is like also like pretty noisy by itself, and you have like a lot of like really noisy moss on top of it too. And that's honestly just one element, right? But if that is applied to like a lot of the elements, then everything is asking for your attention, right? Which means that nothing really is. So foliage, textures, could use a pass. Yeah. Yeah, doing a proper pass on the moss and the ivy could be good. Victoria saying the scene looks great. I would put clothespins on the clothes pieces. Yeah, that could be nice. It's like a little bit of extra detail. You have some like beautiful old wooden ones that are probably used in scenes like this. Pretty simple to make as well. And then also just have, I don't know, just have some sort of grime on them, you know, like indicating like that they've been there for like a long time. Yeah. Those are some of my thoughts. Yeah. Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Keep up the good work. And thank you all for the suggestions in the chat as well. Appreciate that too. Let's keep it on moving. So next person is Victoria. And we are looking at your work. I love the additions that you've done to the main render here. Looks way nicer. I love that we're getting like a natural vignette here now, which is really nice. You fixed up some of the reflections as well, right? I think you were telling us about that. God, I hope that you didn't hear me drinking. Some ASMR stuff going on with that. Okay, cool. Main question for this week is: do you think the renders look better now, or is this something that I should improve? Big fan of the main one. I think the main one is awesome. I think you've done a good job on that. Yeah, that's looking nice. Okay. I think I have to reconsider what I said last week when it comes to adding a ground plane or something like that. I don't really think it's working. I don't know. I really appreciate you trying though, and sometimes that's the way that we figure stuff out, right? But looking back at, for example, this one, right? So here's a couple of things though. I like the lighting is better in the bottom one. I do like that. I don't know if I'm a fan of the ground floor now. Sudar is saying something about where it touches the water, just so that it has like a little bit of interaction there. That could be cool. That's a good shout. But yeah, if we compare these two, I think let's do a test. I'll ask a question in the chat. We're gonna vote for option A, top one, or B. Put your vote in the chat. So we have A is the one from previous week, and then B is the one from this week. I do like the new updates in B. The only thing that I don't like is just the ground plane, in my opinion. But we'll see. Chat decides. Cesar saying B. Blanco Blancho saying B. Top G B. Beauty A. Zayda saying the background from A. Blue the shadow. Zayda saying the background from A and the lights from B. Oh, blur the shadow. That might not be a bad shout, actually. Yeah. Blur it even more. Yeah. Interesting, because if I had a choice, I would also say B. Ground is still distracting to you, I think. I think maybe the shadow is too dark. Maybe. What do you think, Victoria? What do you think? What if putting some kind of water material, perhaps, so it kind of distorts the shadow, but I don't know. Yeah, maybe. Almost like a radial gradient from the bottom of the boat. Zayad, I love this question. What do you think? Well, YouTube is not really made for that sort of interaction, right? Because there's always like a little bit of a delay. But that is actually a question that I ask a lot. Like whenever I have like one-on-ones or like team sessions, like, oh my God. Such a good question. Because you get to figure out so much. Victoria is saying, I like the new lighting, but I agree the ground might still be too distracting. Yeah. And I don't think... I mean, the blur is a good suggestion, actually. I don't really have another suggestion, though. Because you had this one here, right? I don't think that works. That feels like too fake, right? And you'll probably agree with that, too. Yeah, that doesn't work. And again, it's not that it's not bad, right? But like if we're thinking about like making it better, I don't know. It is an interesting one. Yeah, currently I don't have any suggestions for you, Victoria. Yeah, like I said here, like, not a fan of this one, too reflective. Oh yeah, I said here, like, maybe blur, but I don't know. I doubt that this is gonna work. I do still prefer these two, so... yeah. Something to try out. You can try option C. Yeah, I mean, give it a try, see what you can do, right? Try blurring it. I think that's a good suggestion. Top G did mention the water material, perhaps. I don't really know how that would work necessarily. But yeah, I mean, I can't really think about another option that could be a really nice representation at this point. But again, I think the most important thing for me is that if you look at the comparison, look at how dull most of the textures feel now, right? And then if you go to the bottom, you can kind of read all the textures really nice. And it really highlights like how good of a job you've done with like all the bamboo and all that kind of stuff. Again, we're looking at like a pretty low resolution image here, right? With like my setup, but I love that part of it. Look at how Eric J. Fitch shows the boats from Gears of War. God of War, probably. For water, it will be hard to mask out from the boat. It's a good idea, though. Yeah. Or like a material that has a roughness of water. There's an Indiana Jones breakdown presentation that did something like that. Okay, we're getting some good follow-ups from people. So there's some things that you could check out. So Eric J. Fitch, the boats from God of War. I keep wanting to say Gears of War. And then Indiana Jones has some stuff too. Okay. Thank you for the leads, people. I appreciate it. But yeah. That's it. The last thing that I would say is look awesome though. Really good job. Love it. Yeah. Great stuff, Victoria. Yeah. The last thing is just like see what the community comes up with, right? See have a look at those suggestions and then see what you can do. Best of luck. I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with. No worries. Next up, we got Jack Diamonds. There we go. First of all, Jack, I love what you've done with the scene. Oh my god, such an improvement compared to last time. You did ask me... oh, I guess it's voting time again? Because you did ask us to vote on a bunch of stuff, right? So let me get all the votes in and then people can pick. So, because I think I only picked like the latest one. How many do we have? Oh, 5 and the concept, right? Okay, let me get all this organized, and then we've got... We'll see if another vote works. So let me tag these up. So we got A over here, B, C, D, E. I hope this is gonna be pretty small on the stream, but oh wait, let's do something like this maybe. Sorry people, give me a sec. With a lasso. Okay. Come on. Okay, voting time. So, we've got A, B, C, D, and E. Feel free to vote. Shazar is asking, very cool, Diablo 2 inspired? It kind of has that like very, very old school like look, right? Very, very Tristram kind of vibes going on. Hello? What is happening? Victoria saying B, Beauty saying B. Let me take a proper look as well, actually. Yeah. Okay, while people are making their votes, Shazar is saying C or B. I like the slightly warmer colors in the shadows. So C or B. Yeah, I do really like the fog in B, not gonna lie. And also the way that the path feels in B, it feels less noisy than some of the other paths, you know, because you have the reflective pool in the beginning, and then it kind of takes you to the back of the cave. It feels more balanced. I like the lighting from C. The door is becoming the focal point, so C for me. Yeah, that's the main thing about C, right? Like it has that like stronger pull towards the door. Which that was my initial vote, probably because of that reason. Maybe I gravitate towards B and C, I think. B, especially for the mist and the way that is set up, and just the general colors, you know, it kind of has, it's going more into the cool direction, which I really like. Where the other ones, they kind of feel like more into like the green kind of pull. I do have to say, there's something about A though that also it's quite nice. It feels more unified than some of the other ones, but I don't know if that would be my vote though. Keep in mind that the fog in these ranges can be swapped out with the fog from many of the other versions. Oh yeah, but that's your job, Jack. Come on, we're just simply voting. That is your battle. Top G saying, I like the fog in B. It's adding depth to the scene. Yep. I do agree. And for me, this is the way that I look at stuff, right? It obscures some of the detail that is not necessary for the scene. You know? Now you see why I'm asking. Yeah. I get it. I think, honestly, I gravitate the most to B, with potentially the lighting in the cave from C. Potentially. Although I don't mind it to be subtle, so that's honestly a point where I don't really care, you know? So it will be mostly B, and then the rest of it is good. But you got enough votes. You can look at the chat as well, see what people think about it too. So thank you all so much for your opinions. Samara is saying, I like the lighting from the C door becoming the focal point, so C for me. Shazar is saying, I like the colors more in C. Right. C is almost like a shot out of a film, weirdly. Shot on film. Yeah. I think you can combine what's working in A, B, and C somehow, would be nice. We need more voting. I like it. I'll look for more opportunities for voting in the future. It is pretty fun. Yeah, so I think I gravitate more towards like B and C, and it seems like most people do as well. I do love using fog as like a way to break up some of the noise in the scene though. And it's really great at doing this stuff, right? This is a great thing about using fog. It's saying like, hey, look, this section is separate from this section. is such a good tool, because otherwise you end up in situations like this, right? Not that there's necessarily anything wrong with it, but it's hard to distinguish the different layers, you know? So fog can actually be used as like a good way to separate some layers out. I'll give you an example actually of some of the overpaints that I've done for the team challenges. There was one for the team that I was a part of that I kind of want to show off. So the only thing that sucks is I don't have a before and after. One of the things that the team somewhat struggled with, I'll bring it up in a second. So let me put this one here. One of the things that the team struggled with was that there was so much cool stuff happening in the scene, and it was all just like asking for your attention all at once, right? So using fog and using fog sheets and some of these like atmospheric elements to eliminate and blur out some of the stuff that was happening in the scene was actually pretty crucial. Let me bring up the final results here. So we got the final results from Team 6. Let me show you. And the screenshot that I'll show you is not gonna be the final one, right? So this is an overpaint or like a little I don't know, quote unquote fix that I did for the scene during the challenge, right? So this is what it looks like. Looks really great. I think the team did a fantastic job with the scene, right? But there's a lot of elements fighting for your attention, right? A lot of different elements that are vying for your attention the same way. And then if we bring up the thing that I brought up with them was something like this, right? And you can see there's a couple of things. First, adding in like a highlight around the main focal point, right? Kind of just highlighting like, hey, this is where we want to focus. And then deciding like, okay, anything else that's surrounding it, we're going to reduce that in importance to the scene, right? So that's where you use fog sheets to kind of just like blur everything else out so that you're blurring the background, which then adds to the foreground and allows the focal point to just come up, right? Yeah. That's why I love using these fog sheets, you know? Very easy to place. Shaders really like very easy to make as well, but it gives you flexibility in your scene. And that's usually the way that I look at things, right? I try to look at things from like a very art fundamental kind of way. It's like, okay, ignore the notion that this is a castle, right? I just look at the amount of detail that is currently asking for my attention. And then I decide what the best way is to potentially reduce or increase that if we need it, right? But yeah, you can see that is something that we will still be talking about because we do have another meeting tomorrow too. Google. Back to... We backed up. Cool. Okay. I think, did we have everyone from the list? Jack Diamonds? Yes, we did. Okay. We're gonna blast through some of the other ones. So first one, we have Zeno. And Zeno was basically asking the technical question, like, how do I make the feathers? Like the feathers of the wings, right? Main thing there is, depending on how you want to approach it, if you're good at sculpting, I would sculpt them. You can also do, I don't know, like instance meshes or, I don't know, whatever else ZBrush has to offer, right? There's smart ways to do like instance meshes and then you only have to sculpt one and then you can place all the other ones. There's some really smart ways that you can do that. I don't use ZBrush. It's been way too long since I used it, so don't ask me for that specifically. But the process still remains the same, right? What I would do is I would sculpt one of these, then I would symmetry it, and then I would copy the whole setup. And that's it. So you're not sculpting 8 wings, you're sculpting one wing, symmetrying it, and then rotating it to fill out all the other ones. And then once you've done all that, Now you can go in and make like individual tweaks. Maybe this one has a little bit of damage. Maybe this one has a little bit of thing here. Same thing that we discussed for the statues themselves, right? Same approach here. So you want to work smart, not hard. I mean, smart and hard, ideally. But yeah. Hopefully that was helpful. Again, if you have more like ZBrush specific questions, probably throw it in the chat, in the community chat, because there's going to be people that can help you out way more than I can on this, because I can't even remember the last time that I opened ZBrush, honestly. Cool, thank you, Hads. Moving on to Vanessa. Vanessa is making this modular kit, for which actually the modularity looks really nice. The only comment that I had is that it looks a little bit stiff, but this is taking into account that this is for an actual set design, so it has to be somewhat stiff, right? Because it has to be built towards like real world constraints and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, for a game, I would find a way that I can break up like how stiff the modular kit feels, right? Or add additional detailed meshes to it so that it kind of can break up like how blocky or stiff it feels. For example, sometimes you have like little ornaments that you can add on the sides. Maybe some of the silhouette here is broken up by like the gutter sticking out. Like it can be small stuff like that that can really help, you know. And then this is more of a tip. This is not something that you have to implement now, but sometimes more unique pieces are just made unique, you know? What I mean by that is that not everything has to be broken up. Sometimes you have a unique element that would be pretty complex to make in a modular kit. You might as well just reuse the same materials and the same structural elements, but make it into like a unique piece, right? So for example, this guy here, you can make that like one mesh, for example. As an example, not saying that you need to, right? But that's an example for how that would work in games. Next, you have your trim sheets. A quick little note here, in a game setup, these would all be separate titleables. So they're not trim sheets, they're just all separate titleables, because this goes to the point that someone was making before with like the 5 unique assets, like how do I combine them in UVs? This is also the same sort of thinking, where if I have them as separate assets, I have less concerns about then having to pull them in separately, because I'm not pulling in other data, right? Because for example, in this case, let's say worst case scenario, right? On this little texture that I have here, let's say I have an asset in my scene that is only going to be pulling in this texture. That means that I'm wasting all of this texture space, right? So this is literally wasting resources, because if the asset in my scene is only using this thing here, that means that I'm only using like 20%, because it's still going to pull in the entire texture, right? So that's why it's usually easier to just separate everything out. Every separate surface gets like its own material, because then whatever gets pulled in is going to be pulled in by its entirety, right? Again, there's good use cases where you can make exceptions, but that's the general rule, and then make the exceptions. And then also, yeah, this is just the same thing, just rotate it. You can just rotate your UVs and then have the same thing. Just a side note. Cool. Yeah, I think the modularity itself is working really well. I think you captured everything really well. Now it comes down to like making more detailed textures, really putting in like the refined modeling and all that kind of stuff, right? Like really go after the details. Because this looks nice as a base, and now we need to see how we can add details into it. See you, Zayad. Good night. Thank you for being here, and best of luck with the scene. Right. And also thank you, Vanessa, for sharing your work once again. Next up, we'll move to Ilya. I also just realized that I forgot to give feedback or share the feedback from last week with 2 people. Whoops. Apologies for that. Where are you in the list? Ilya, there you are. Your primary question is about the floor textures, how to make them look more natural and realistic. So that's this stuff, right? I'm gonna sound boring. I think the whip tags were still applied. Yeah, I think I forgot that part. You're 100% right, McFall. I'm gonna be really boring here, Ilya. If you want to get this to a better place, references. References, and really taking your time to look at the references. Try to be specific, right? So what I mean by that is if this is a wooden floor, it is not just a wooden floor. It needs to be like a hardwood oak floor, maybe even with a specific kind of oak, you know? But like, try to be specific. Because that is going to give you a better selection of images. Now, a couple of other things that I can say is, what is happening? I'm looking at like the height map. Like, why is it so bumpy? I think there's issues with the height map. There's issues with the height map. The gap between the planks. Is too noisy. The pattern continues between planks. That's not a thing that you want. Right, so for example, you can see that the pattern from this continues in this, right? That only happens if this plank is from the exact same tree and is following up after this cut, which just doesn't happen in real life, right? So every plank needs to be separate, right? So every plank needs to have like its own separate setup, or at least some randomization in the setup where I can't see the pattern anymore, because that's going to add to the believability already. Right, and then also watch out. I don't know what is happening here again, but I think that might be broken tiling, because it seems to be going all the way around here, that you have this like, it goes from a thick gap to a small gap. And you have something similar happening here as well, which is not realistic. Your height map also might have too much info, which is for the normal map. Yeah. Low tessellation designer, says Fairmora. You might be right. Yeah. You might be right. It might also just be weird material stuff. It's hard to tell, you know? Yeah. Yeah, but here's a couple of things already, right? So, one, issues with the height map. Two, the gap between your planks is just like way too noisy. Like if you zoom in, that noise that we have here, that is just not realistic, right? So I would fix that. And just not only the noise, but like the entire gaps, right? Look at reference and see how that works. And try to give them a bit more depth, right? Because now what is happening is you go from a plank to not a plank. But we need to fake that somehow so that you have like a little bit of a bevel, so that you give designer a little bit more space to then make the sides of the planks and then pull them down again, right? Because it's basically the difference between, let's say, it's basically the difference between this shape. This is the shape that you have now. It basically goes from like black, from white to black, right? What you want to have is, can we actually just Gaussian blur this bad boy? Your shape needs to be something more like this. And the difference is, like, if you just blur something, right, you give it a bevel. And that's going to give you more space between the planks. And then your planks can do something like this, right? Right. And then I have some other things as well. Again, with your textures, and this is something that Shazar pointed out as well. You have a lot of noise in your normal map. And sometimes you have to decide like what is going to be height map related, especially in your tidal texture, right? But the noise in general just applies to this too, where you have a lot of just like noise in the normal map, which keep that for the edges or where things are damaged, right? Because you don't want the whole thing to be noisy. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful. Let's see, is there something else? No tessellation designer, sometimes it does that. Yes, yes. Yeah, Shazar brings up a good point. What you want to do in a very broad sense, right, is your bigger shapes are going to be represented by your height map, and then your medium to small shapes are going to be represented by a normal map, right? And there's some sort of an overlap in the middle, but you don't want to use your height map to be used for your smaller shapes. Cool. Thank you, Ilya. Thank you. Best of luck. Gonna be a short one from Vasia. Vasia was basically just asking for feedback on like the changes made from last week, and I think honestly they work great. I think, yeah, in terms, I think you've done some good choices. I think what happened is you pulled in. Let me actually see. Let's do a comparison here. So yeah, that's happened this week. Like it. It also, there's a bunch of additional effects that we didn't even talk about, right? But if with this, the silhouette of the umbrella stands out way better. It's way more impactful in the scene. I love the new composition with the legs. Yeah, really good stuff. Really good stuff. I like this. Pretty simple, normal for small detail or like fine detail, then height for chunky shapes. Yep. Yeah, I don't really have anything to add here, so yeah, I mean, great stuff. I love the new composition. I love the new chunky shapes and some of the additions that you've done. Good stuff. Looks like a leaper from like Arc Raiders. Yeah. The janky jumpy boys. Beauty is saying, if I will be asking feedbacks on textures, do you need like all of them? I just don't know how much you can see with your experience. I mean, usually I don't need to go into like very detailed breakdown with like texture feedback, especially if we're focusing on like the textures that we just done, you know? Because it's not actually in-depth feedback that matters at this sort of stage. It is actually like, you need to look at references and you need to distill like the shapes and decide like which thing is going to be, like Shazar said, which thing is going to be a normal map, which thing is going to be a height map. How can I get this shape and kind of like make that into Substance Designer? So we're not even worried about like, oh my God, my normal map values are like, or like my roughness values are a little bit wrong, you know? I don't care about that yet. Like, it is literally just focusing on the big stuff. And then once we've got the big stuff figured out, then we'll drill down to the smaller stuff. So yeah, maybe that's a good point for everyone. I mean, if you want to share your textures, that's always a good thing, right? And then we can decide during the session if we're going to be using it or not. So it never hurts, but yeah. Right. Next one is from Cool Major. As I mentioned in the post above, I want to focus on getting the rock formation right, as it's the focal point. I'm trying to get a natural weathered look and have used world-aligned textures with RGB masking for variation. How do I make the transitions look more organic and believable at this stage before adding other props to it? Right, I think the major thing here to watch out for is directionality. This is, in my opinion, the key thing when it comes to working with rocks, right? You need to make, even if you're working with modular rocks, you need to make them feel as a single rock. How you do that is by implementing directionality, right? Because the reason why your arch currently feels like it's chaotic is because directionality of the individual rocks is chaotic, right? So if we look at this, and if we just remove this a bit, if we remove the overpaint, you can see the directionality of the rocks that have come out of the soil and have built this over millennia, right? You can kind of feel that directionality. And if that is missing, that is usually the main contributor to it just feeling like it's just bashed together with the random rocks, right? Because if we think about it, right? I did this little overpaint here. And I actually don't know exactly how this works, but this would be my assumption, right? Because I'm not a rock guy. But what I assume happened is that this was like a solid chunk of rock at a point way long ago. And then somewhere down below, like there was like a little hole that got created, or like the little gap, like a little split or whatever it was. Then over an enormous amount of time, what happened is you get like air erosion, right? So what happens is that like the air just goes through it and it erodes the rock over like a long period of time. So what happens is it just starts hollowing out, like the rock from the middle, right? So that happened over time. So you have to almost, the thing here is that is the story that can help with how you make this directional, right? So you have to assume that it's like a one block of chunky rock that is just carved out over time, right? Cerro Arco in Paraguay. Yeah, there's a bunch of these cool rocks. I think a couple of years ago, actually, one of the more famous ones collapsed on the coast of France, I think, or Spain. Let me look this up. Cerro Arco in Paraguay. Oh, this is a chunky boy though. Oh no, it just looked chunky. Yeah. This stuff is cool, right? And this is just like wind erosion. It's all just like wind. Just like... It almost feels fake, though. It's almost like it's plastered on. Yeah, this stuff is cool, you know? It's just the wind carving this out over like a long period of time. Which is really cool. Yeah. So that's the way that I want you to see it, right? Like it's one rock that just got carved out over time and it has the same directionality, and that's the thing that's gonna help, right? So the way that you need to do it here is all of these like different angles, they need to be 100% aligned, right? So if we're doing something like this direction, all the stuff that we add needs to follow the same sort of direction, right? That's the way that it's built up. And that's going to help a lot with the readability. It's going to make it really consistent. Again, find like more of these cool references, right? And like really try to distill what you see. Like, how was this made? How was it shaped over time? Because that's going to help you a lot with like understanding on how to then have to rebuild it with your own stuff, right? Cool. Johnny W just became a member of our community, probably because they're just here for the nerdy rock talk, you know. Happy to see you. Welcome to the rock community. Cool. Sadie is up next. Sadie is a new member of our community, so welcome, Sadie. Happy to have you here. Let's have a look. I'm working on the harbor scene as my first environment. If anyone has any feedback on my textures so far, I'd love to hear it. Nice. On your textures, so here's an interesting thing. The first thing that I thought was, if this is going to be your inspiration, right? Your reference. I thought about not your textures, but the way that you render things, right? And the main question that I have is like, can we make this like more graphic? Like harsh shadows, really playing with like the textures and making it more like graphic and all that kind of stuff. I think there's an example from Inka. Inka Cipolla. Yeah, she made this, what did she call it? Gamer Guidance Gigafactory, right? But the reason why I bring this up is because it has a very graphical feel to it, right? And I think that could be like pretty interesting to kind of use as an example. Just an idea that I'm throwing in the mix. Because I think honestly the textures are good, right? But it's, if we want to go for that like graphical look, then that is mostly going to come from the way that you render things and the lighting and the way that you handle your shadows and the post-processing and like all that kind of stuff, right? Is this Valorant inspired? It kind of looks like it, right? Like it kind of has that like graphical tone to it. It could also be somewhat inspired by like Marathon, you know? Like they kind of have... Yeah, I think Marathon is like more graphic, where like Valorant is still... It's almost graphic, but then still blended with stylized. You know, that's the way that I look at things. Or like at that. If you were to ask me. A couple of things of note, like if you have these bigger shapes, add a couple of bevels to them. That's a small tip. And then for the textures, because you did ask me that, right? Like I said, I think number one focus for the textures should be not the textures themselves, but the rendering. Right? So rendering first, and then see if you can push your textures. Because I could tell you like, hey, your textures currently miss like a little bit of like roughness, you know? But in this case, because of specific art style, you might not want that, right? You might not want that, you might not need that if you make things feel like really graphical, right? So I would start there first and then see once you've done a thing that pushes you closer to that graphical approach, then see what you need to do with your textures, right? Because it's going to flow down from there. I hope that makes sense, Sadie. That would be my gut instinct and my opinion on how to approach this. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful. And again, welcome to the community. Lovely to have you. Next up is Nautila asking about trim sheets. I found one arch in Italy that collapsed, but none in France. Lover's Arch. Oh, it might have been Italy then. Yeah. Yeah, I think that collapsed like... God. I'm so bad with time now. Thanks, COVID. But that collapsed like quite recently. But the Lover's Arch, that makes sense. That rings a bell. Right. Let's have a look at Nautila's work. My question for the week. I kind of need help with trim sheet planning. I'm trying to break up the profiles of the base wall trim on the left and the roof cornice trim on the right, and to see if I can reuse some elements. However, the height on the left piece is almost half of the height of the left. On the right. What are we looking at? Where's the other one? I am not too sure. Because honestly, this, if you're pointing at this, maybe? I think that could honestly just be like a mistake in concept art. I would keep them consistent. And just make it with one trim. So yeah, make one trim for both, and then I would literally take, you know, the stutter you're doing here is good. I would just literally take like, cool, that's my top trim. You probably have like a bottom trim here. You probably want to have like a trim for these guys. And then you can all add that to the same sheet, right? And then at a certain point, if you're like, I got to this point, I don't really need to add anything more. You can literally just cut all this stuff out by making it a 2x1 texture. Not sure if you heard about the term yet or have used them before, but you don't have to use square textures. You can literally make a 2x1. So this is like 2x1. So that means that you don't have to fill this whole thing up. You can literally just have like half a texture that is just going to be trim sheets. You can do it that way too, because you're not going to need like a lot of trim sheets for this. And what I would do then is, if you then want to add like height to it, depending on the depth of the trim, what you can do is you just make them flat, and then after the fact, you then go in and do some modeling. We do have like a bunch of other trips. There's we have a workshop on our portfolio. What am I saying? On our YouTube channel from God, I'm blanking on his name now. Oh my god, I was literally talking about this stuff. I'll send the link. So let me go on YouTube. Let me go to our channel. Oh my god, I'm still thinking about his name. Come on. From dum dum dum. Come on, where are we? John Arellano. Oh my god, that took way too long. Apologies, John. But here's a good one. He basically explains everything about like building modular kits. He probably uses, he has like a very similar style in this environment, basically. So you can literally take what he did for the environment. Because there's two ways you could build flat first and then extrude it, right? But this has a limitation of like you can only go so far before you start distorting the texture, right? So that works for like flat stuff. But you can also just like bake a trim, but it's actual like geometry trim, and that is something that John talks about too, just as an example. So yeah, I hope that was helpful. Pewdie saying what? Yep. Yeah, you can do 2x1. You can even do crazy stuff like 16x1 textures if you really need to. A friend of mine, like Will, he was in the chat before, he did this crazy thing where he had like a 16x1 texture because he just needed like a strap, and he was like, well, I can't really add it to another texture and I just need a strap, so I'm just gonna make it a 16x1 texture because that's like the measurement of the strap that I need. You can do that. But that's an extreme case. You're not really going to use that. I always thought it has to be a perfect square. No, it doesn't. But there's a good reason why you believe that being so, though. Because 2x1 textures are, in the sense of games, relatively new. Because there was a time where like a game engine couldn't even render anything that wasn't square. Or like it wouldn't even accept anything that wasn't square. So yeah. It's a very common belief. But you can do anything. Textures these days in Unreal Engine especially don't have to be Arrow 2 even. Which is even crazier. It's still a good thing. It's still a good thing to do though. Skyboxes are crosses. Yeah. Oh yeah, and cube maps are like really weirdly laid out as well. Because the way that they're rendered. Yeah. Let me see. So I don't even know if I can reuse elements due to the size difference. Some of the other elements are easier to assign, like flat wood elements, door frames, wood, and panels. Yep. To create 2 each of the square and the rectangular shaped panels for variation. This is the right approach. I am honestly not sure what you mean with this question. Let me read it again. So I'm trying to break the profiles up with a base wall trim on the left and the roof cornice trim on the right. And okay, so that's this image, right? So that's the base wall trim. Good. So that's this wall trim probably. And then the top is going to be this guy. Cool. And to see if I can reuse some elements. However, the height of the left piece is almost half the one on the right. So I don't know if I can reuse elements due to the size difference. Oh, I see. You are literally talking about like trying to break up this trim into multiple trims. No, I wouldn't do that. Because the thing is, it just becomes too complex, right? It's probably going to be way easier to just say like, hey, look, I need a bottom trim. So this is going to be my bottom trim. My bottom trim, and then this is going to be roughly the same height. So this is going to be my roof trim. And then you're going to have like your arch trim, and then you can have like other stuff on top of it too, right? I would do it that way. And then if you see an opportunity later down the line where you're like, hey, I need a small strip and I only need to use this one, that is fine, right? You can do that. But I wouldn't try to break every trim up into a separate trim again, because that's going to be overly complex. And honestly, if we look at your scene, I don't really see an opportunity to use that all that much anyway. So we would be doing a whole bunch of work for not a lot of gain, right? So keep it simple, keep it straightforward, and then just, yeah. And then you can even do something like this, right? Where half of this is like your wooden paneling, right? Because you have some wooden paneling like on the side. You could do something like that if you wanted to. And then you have one texture for all the wood elements you're seeing, right? That's more the way that I would approach it. Question in the chat from Pewdie. You pointed 2 trim strips. Could you make one and reuse it for the arch? I don't know how much you need to reuse. Here's the thing. You can reuse a lot with a trim sheet, right? It just depends on what you want to use it for. Because even here, like the example that I just mentioned, right? There might be an opportunity where you're like, hey, I've got like this small top trim. Let's say you have like a small trim up here, right? You don't want to make a new trim. Cool. You've got like trims over here that probably have some like really interesting stuff that you can just like reuse, you know? You don't need to make a separate trim for it. So that's why I'm saying do the bottom, do the roof, because they're 2 separate trims and they look like visually unique, right? Then have a simpler one for this little trim. And then maybe even have like an empty one here for this little section, right? And then you honestly have like all the stuff that you need to make this room, right? So let's say this is the arch and like this is the flat piece of the arch and this is the arch itself. And then maybe there's some like additional leftover stuff here that you can fill up with whatever you want. But now I have everything that I need. And honestly, anything that comes on top of it, you can probably make out of like all the stuff that's in here already. That's the benefit, right? Like at a certain point, you don't want to keep adding to your trim sheet because you would just be losing time when you can just easily map it onto like an existing thing, because no one's gonna notice that it's reusing like the same trim, but it's not using the same full trim, you know? This is honestly the stuff that I do a lot. There's so much that you can make out of pre-existing stuff that is being underutilized and looks as good as making it new. So if you ask me the question, I would always point towards reusing rather than creating additional stuff. Can you ask Player Games to release Forza 6 tomorrow instead? Unfortunately, I have no powers. It's out of my control. Forza 5 is a good game though. I really loved Forza 5. I really did. I did play Forza 4 more though, for whatever reason. I don't know why. I thought about this, but I can't really explain it. I think there was something about the progression that was more interesting about Forza 4. But I don't know what specifically it was. I still play 5 like a hell of a lot. Alright, last 2 for the evening. We got Roku. Roku going first. No specific question, more like general feedback on the whole thing. Pretty much everything in the scene is still a whip, nothing final. Awesome. I love your little sculpts though, little foliage sculpts that I'm seeing. Really cool stuff. Love to see it. But yeah. Really, really good stuff. Overall, you're doing a good stuff in trying to break up the silhouette already. What I would already start planning for is additional silhouette breakup. What I mean by that is this roof, right? Like you have small silhouette breakup, which is good, but large silhouette still can be broken up, right? So kind of having like a little bit of a dip in the roof. This is over exaggerated, right? Having a little bit of a dip in the roof, having the same thing here where there's kind of like a little bit of a curve happening here. It's that kind of stuff that really is going to make a difference, right? So doing the same thing here, breaking up this silhouette, this silhouette. Anywhere where you have like straight lines, basically, want to do like a little bit of a breakup pass, you know? So that would be the first thing. Second thing is blending. This is something that you probably have in mind, but I'm gonna shout it out anyway. So blending, let me actually pick green or something. So blending is blending the terrain with the stairs, blending this section with that section, you know, like having like a little bit of a blend going on here, and this blend then continues on the floor. Doing the same thing here. Basically, anywhere where you have corners or like things coming together, you kind of want to add like a little bit of a blend on both of the surfaces, right? And that just means that you have to take into account like vertex paint shaders and decals and all that kind of stuff, right? Yeah, basically any surface that can be blended. So there is some stuff happening here, for example, right? But it's thinking about like blending materials with each other that are relevant, right? Because now we have some sort of concrete or mud, but that is not blending from this, right? Because we have sand literally here. So what I would expect instead is that the sand would be filling up like most of the crevices here, right? Because the point of blending things together is that we create like visual consistency between different surfaces in the level, right? And then we can do that here. And also it indicates, you know, people traveling about. What I mean by that is, you know, there could be literally a person standing here, going up the staircase, and they drag like a little bit of sand up the staircase every time. And that is indicating, you know, it doesn't have to be footsteps or anything like that, but just like some subtle vertex painting can help with the believability of the whole scene, right? So maybe using mesh distance fields for that. No, you don't need to. I mean, you can just simply set up like a vertex color and then just like use materials that you already have and just blend them with the materials that are already set up. Keep it simple with some stuff, right? You can do fancy stuff if you wanted to. But honestly, for most of the stuff here, vertex painting is good, right? Especially if you talk about blending. Sure, it's a bit manual, but I think for a lot of people, that manual stuff is going to be way quicker than having to set up and faff about with mesh shaders and like mesh distance fields and I don't know, RVT and like all those other things, you know. Blanco Blancho, is there a workshop for vertex painting? Is there a workshop for vertex painting? We have workshops that talk about vertex painting. No, I can't really point you to one that is specifically using that technique and like zooming in on it. The best one that we have is probably going to be talking about destruction and how to blend destruction. Let me... No, not that. Let me... Destruction. So that would be this one. That one is probably going to go over a lot of the techniques used. Right, cool. So we talked about that. Silhouettes, blending. This is going to be weird, but blending times 2. This is going to be interesting. What I mean with this is, or maybe let's not call it blending. We don't want to make it too confusing. Consistency in textures or materials. So what I mean by that is that you have dark rocks, you have like medium rocks, and then you have like the light rocks, right? So you have dark, medium, light. All of that stuff needs to come together in the middle somewhere. It can be dark and it can be medium and it can have those different variations, right? But the variations that we're seeing now is that they almost come from like totally different regions, which is not what we want. Shadar, thank you so much for all the good feedback, all the suggestions. I love it. I really appreciate it. And yeah, have a good night. So yeah, having all those be a little bit more consistent, because here's the thing, right? Like a lot of medieval like architecture, right, came from like local quarries and all that kind of stuff. If you want to see some my inspiration and where I got my learnings from, like a lot of them, come from this place. This is a castle that they're rebuilding. With the colors, I tried to stick to the concept, but I guess I did not nail it. Well, sometimes what you have to do is you have to get away from the concept to actually make it more believable, right? Because I think even if we throw away like all the logic that I just brought up, right? I don't think this edge looks good on this like other colored like wall. Because like what you would have on a normal wall, right? Is that the edges, they would literally be built out of the same stone, right? Unless you have some like later medieval stuff where they literally talk about like decorating like little edges that are like added on top of it. But that's not what we're doing here, right? This is not like this is a little cloister like monastery kind of thing, right? So sometimes it's looking at the concept and saying like, I don't like that. How can I make it better? Yeah, Castle of Gideon, really cool stuff to look into. They have a series called The Fires of Gideon. And that is really interesting because they talk about like all the different things that they have to do to make the castle, right? And one of them was literally like how to make stones to build a castle. Really cool stuff. Like, and they literally go and break down like, hey, this is where we get them from the quarry. This is how we put them into shape. This is how we put them into building. Like, there's really, really cool stuff there. What kind of color would you think of the edge stones? It is almost just like the similar, maybe slightly darker, but I would keep them like really similar to what we already have. Because I can see, for example, this difference works pretty well, right? This difference just doesn't work for me anymore. So I can see, for example, that the base foundation is built out of a different stone. I can get behind that, right? Just from like a visual perspective. But having like another foundation below it that seems to be more modern as well just doesn't really make too much sense to me. And that's just thinking about it from like a logical perspective, right? Yeah. Have a browse, look at some references and see what you can come up with. Cool. Thank you, Roku. Good stuff. I love the progression on the environment, by the way. It's looking really, really nice. So good stuff. Last one for today. Let's have a look here. So this is from Umbrella. What can I do to push the realism into facade work? I'm planning to add curtains, weathered bricks, and a LED string for decorations. I'm planning to do some sort of back alley entrance or a restaurant leading into the alley. Cool. Okay, so if you're doing this, again, we'll talk about references a lot, right? I just looked around a little bit. This is like 5 minutes of work. And there's like a bunch of ideas already in here, right? You've got like... Hello? Can I paint, please? Thank you. You've got like these little ornaments. We've got these little ornaments as well. They're pretty cool. Even in this like pretty boring wall, there's kind of a lot of like interesting stuff happening there already, right? Like a little broken up section here, a little bit of mortar sticking out here. There's like some color discoloration here. Some really cool stuff. You can see like the former remnants of like a staircase here with like leaks happening around like the areas where like you have these like supports, which are really cool. You have these supports sticking out of like the mortar, which I like a pretty cool thing. I think something literally taking this element and just being like, yup, that's mine now. That could already make it like way more interesting. You could almost have it go from like, I don't know, here up until here or something, right? And then it continues. It could maybe have like a section going up here that connects with like this rooftop again. And the benefit is, this is like a modular thing, right? So once you build like a set of platforms and staircases and all that kind of stuff, you can add whatever you want. And that can add a lot to the facade, right? So yeah, literally taking fire escape, that can be cool. There's a lot of really cool like contextual detail, right? Like even these little like bars across the windows, like you have like a bunch of cables here. There's like an old door that they used to open up to then have like stuff go into it. Again, it's honestly, the way that I look at this, it's like a charcuterie board. I was just like, oh my god, I love this element. I'm gonna add that in. Oh, this element, add that onto the table. This element, add that to the table. You know, that's the way that I would look at this. And then you can think about like, okay, what can I do to make the restaurant like more interesting, right? Like if this is like a back alley restaurant, cool. How can we use some of those elements to reinforce each other, right? So let's have like a made-up sign, right? And then maybe there's like a bunch of string lights that are hanging from this. Kind of go up until this little pillar. And there's like a fuse box here. And then I don't know, there's probably like a bunch of bins over here. And then those string lights, they can like connect to this thing again. I mean, there's so much cool stuff that you can do with it. It's almost like you just pick out like what cool shit that you want to do, you know? Leave the door slightly open, have some like light coming from the inside. It depends on how crazy you want to go, right? Like how complicated you want to go. You can do some really cool stuff here. So yeah, I hope that was helpful, Umbrella. So it just comes down to, honestly, I think the search term that I used was, I actually landed on like a really interesting blog from like a New York, just like a citizen, you know, like a person in New York, like being fascinated by this one alley. And he had a blog post that was like a couple of pages long talking about this single alley. And he had like a bunch of images and he was like really nerding out about a single alley, about like how romantic it was and all that kind of stuff. That is the juice that you want to find, right? Because he's going to give you like all the stuff that you've never even thought about when it comes to these alleys. So yeah, I didn't even read through it, but like he had like, I don't know, like 20 to 30 images on this one page with like a bunch of text in between. So yeah. Find those blogs, find those like niche places where you can really just like get into the history and the thematic of what you're researching, right? The history of each brick. Yeah, some people are freaking crazy, right? Like that's why I keep saying like environment art to me is always an exploration of history and someone else's passions, and you know, like even the Castle of Gideon that I was just talking about, right? Sorry, thank you, Umbrella. Thank you for sharing your work. But yeah, even the history that I was talking about that castle, right? I spend Oh my god, hundreds and hundreds of hours just like consuming like, oh, this is where the food comes from. This is where the bricks come from. This is when it started. This is how they build it up. This is where they failed. This is how they repaired it. This is how they make cranes. This is, oh my god, it's like a treasure trove. And it's like, oh my god, you're like, every day it's just like, ooh, what am I gonna discover today? You know? It's really cool. I love that stuff. It's like, I'm a sponge for that kind of stuff. Because it's transferable between like different ages as well, right? Like you can kind of see that if you want to build something that is I don't know, cyberpunky, but it's still building on those, like, for example, Cyberpunk does this cool thing where they use like the brick buildings from Manhattan and then literally just build like a frame on top of it and then make it like Cyberpunk, right? You need to know how like a normal like brownstone building in Manhattan kind of works and is constructed to then build like a Cyberpunk shell on top of it, right? So yeah, I don't know, I love that stuff. But yeah, I've been yapping on for too long. It's also sleep time as well, so I'm gonna keep it short. Thank you all for being here. I'm really busy currently with wrapping up the team challenges, with also redesigning the front page of the website and making sure that those team challenges actually get to shine in like an even better way than they're already doing. So I'm really excited to share more about that stuff. And yeah, I'll be happy to share that with you soon. But other than that, have a good evening and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.